My name is Anthony,
I'm Gabby, and we're silly today.
and we've got fruit snacks
Yay, fruits!
and coffee. This is the place to be
I got my Poe mug
for
here.
fruit snacks. Ooh, I like that. I like
Yeah,
that one. Yep. Your
my,
Poe mug for
yeah,
fruit
I love
snacks, coffee, crazy
it.
peeps.
Mm-hmm.
This show we talk about voiceover, everything to do with voiceover, being voice actor, everything that's going on. If you are new here or just stopping by, say hello in the chat, ask questions. We love questions.
If you're new here, you might be a little confused what these crazy people are doing. It's okay.
You might run away screaming in terror, but please come back.
Oh,
We are going to, and that today's topic, you might run away screaming in terror, but it's a very important topic.
dun
We're going to
dun
be talking about
dun.
rates.
Right.
Rates. Oh my goodness, the rates.
This could spill over into 2 days. We're gonna see
Oh
what
my
happens.
goodness.
This could be
Convene a
the rest of our
panel,
week right here, Anthony. Who
need
knows?
security. It's kind of crazy.
You know.
So let's start. Let's start and kind of kick us off, Gabby.
Oh,
Rondell says the terror.
you're gonna put me
Yes.
in the hot seat
Oh,
right
you want me to start? Again,
now.
I can start. Do you want
Oh.
me to start?
Well,
It.
okay. Well, let's start with this. Let's
Okay.
start by saying rates are one of, if not the most contentious parts of the industry, right? Everybody
Absolutely.
has opinions, everybody
Yes.
has differences. Oh my God.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. And I would say because of that, before we go any further, I personally think that it's okay. We need to acknowledge that everyone does have different opinions and feelings about it, and it is often tied to how we feel as
mhm.
contributors, as some of the value sometimes gets tied, like our
Yep.
value as people or individuals sometimes gets tied to our rates. So because of that, it's a very hot topic. Gabby, you're like, where are
Oh,
you? Your head is
sorry. I'm
like it's
writing. I'm
Gabby's already
writing notes.
left. She
No,
said
I'm
this
so
is
sorry. I'm writing notes based
you're
on
like,
the things we're talking about, and I'm
oh
so
yeah.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. But anyway, so yeah, so I
In
just
front
wanted
of
to
the mic
agree with
for what
you.
it's
It
worth.
is very, it's a very wide, and on a side note, we'll keep on rates, but that also I think does make it challenging for clients a lot of times because
Oh
no matter what
God.
voice actor that they go to another voice actor, it's a whole different a whole different rate, and a
It's
whole different way they
all
charge.
discombobulated cattywampus all the time.
Hmm.
Okay. And I have a friend who's fond of saying 2 + 2 equals potato salad. And that right there is the answer when it comes to rates. Absolutely. It's yes, 2 + 2 equals potato salad. None of it makes sense. So
Yes, I
so I
like that.
think
2 + 2 = potato
okay. Oh
salad.
yeah, it's I mean, come on, who doesn't love that?
Good deal.
Um uh, so I think Anthony and I both are on 100% the same page when it comes to one super important thing about rates, which is at the end of the day, right? We live in a free market and no one can tell you what you should or should not be charging.
Yeah.
That is just the reality, right?
Well,
And you can't be an entrepreneur and you can't be a business owner and not support that idea, right?
right.
I mean, it's not my business or Anthony's business or anybody else's to be like, you have to charge. You don't have to do anything.
That's
That's
right. That's right. We're
so,
fortunate. We don't have to do anything.
yeah, we
Exactly.
don't have to do anything. Now, are there guidelines? Are there good practices, right? Are there things that are better for the industry as a whole and for your fellow voice actors? Of course, of course. But at the end of the day, you know what you need to earn
Hmm.
and you know what's going to get you to your financial goal.
Yes.
You do you.
Absolutely. This is a topic that also I think of rates as not being afraid to acknowledge that they evolve too.
Oh, for
And
sure.
your opinion about rates will evolve as well.
Oh my God, absolutely.
And it's going to change,
Yeah.
as you progress and for example, you get a new studio, you get new equipment. There will
Mhm.
things that will change, and you
Cost of doing
will, and
business.
your rates will change with them.
Cost of doing business,
Mhm.
inflation right now, as we're all seeing, right? All of these things play a role. And you're right. And Anthony, that's a great point, right? That rates are not stagnant. Just
Right.
because you charged something 10 years ago doesn't mean you have to honor it. Just because you charged something a year ago doesn't mean you have to honor it. Something we see a lot in the industry is that when jobs are pre-negotiated, which may seem like a really strange thing, especially for folks who are brand new. Sometimes when you book a job, right, it pays X,
Right.
but in the details or the contract, it will actually say if you want to renew the term after a certain length of time, let's just say a year for argument's sake, it's the rate plus an additional percentage. Usually it's 10%. And that's exactly what that's to account for. It's to
Right.
account for increases of everything, of just life.
Well, right, exactly. I mean, we know inflation plays a role in every year, right? And if you,
Mhm.
even, my wife's a teacher, right? So every year, they try to at least something deal with, a 3%, although we know that was way more over the last couple of years,
Mhm.
but that inflation every year, right? Cost goes up every
Yeah.
single year. So that's pretty regular to be expected for us. All right, so I think talking about the actual rates themselves.
Mm.
Well, first off, I think there are, if you're like, hey, I'm new, or I'm trying to figure out this whole thing, what do I charge? There are, including us that we have them, there are these rate guides, and they're published now. Again, first, for just the sake of what we're saying here, anyone and their cousin can publish a rate guide.
Correct.
So that is true. So that's important to note. Okay. But there are some rate guides that are, I guess, up there in the idea of they have a lot of support, or people viewing them or using them loosely, or whatever you will, right? There are some guides. All right. And they're out there. So that's always a nice place to start to see the different categories, what the terminology that's being
Mhm.
used, the possible pricing.
Mhm.
Whenever you're always going to have a low price to a high price, there's always going
Mhm.
to be, the top price and the low price and things in the middle. You're always going to
Mhm.
have this. And these guides at least give you, I don't know, when you say, Gabby, a place to start
Yes.
thinking of how to price your work.
Well, what does the word guide mean?
Yeah, that's
You
a
know,
good point.
it's not a law,
No,
right? It's not
exactly.
it's a guideline. That's its intended purpose. So let's talk about the rate guides that are out there, right?
Hmm.
So the top of the food chain, if you will, is the SAG-AFTRA rate guide.
Right.
That's what not most, that's what all union actors and union projects have to go through. But here's the thing, just because it's the union and just because it's their official guide doesn't necessarily mean that all the pricing is stellar, right?
Hmm.
Like in some areas it is, and in some aspects of voiceover, we can look at a union rate and go, "Oh, that's a really good payday," right? Like network television,
Hmm.
commercial network television, those rates are usually really great. But then keep in mind the reason actors are constantly striking for one thing or another, or, they're fighting for better rates. I mean, we just saw it with animation and everything that went down,
Hmm.
with the video game world and character actors, and, they're fighting for better rates. A lot of people will tell you that the video game rates of SAG-AFTRA are poo, and that they're, they're kind of in the toilet. So just know that, right? Um, what else do we have? There's
Yeah.
other.
So then we have, yeah. So I think after that, then there's the GVAA rate
Yep,
guide.
yep.
All
And
right.
I'll be honest, I don't really know why GVAA created a rate guide. I don't feel like I have I don't know if it was specifically to target it toward non-union actors. I don't know if it was to specifically sort
Mhm.
of address what I would consider like a mid-tier
Mhm.
voice actor to be. I don't know. I don't know what their logic was, but that rate guide has become very popular.
Yes, absolutely. There is the
Well, there's
uh
yours. There's the
there's
video today.
there's yep, there's Vio's Journey rate guide. And
Mhm.
I created that rate guide for the purpose of when I came into the industry, there was a shift going on to include words, like per words, as
Oh.
opposed to the typical, hey, listen, we charge a studio fee
Mhm.
and then we charge licensing fee, right? And then there's some different categories, whether it's voicemail, prompts, and all these things. But the point is there was a this shift or not a shift, but just an addition to say, hey, we're also could charge per word. And that really wasn't being addressed yet, so that's why I created my guide.
Hey, let's address what I think is the elephant in the room, right? Because anybody who has a rate guide has always come under fire for one reason or another. And I think that with Avia's Journey's rate guide, one of the things or two of the things that we've seen is one, it was very targeted towards beginners, right? And still kind
Yes,
of is. It's meant
completely.
to be an entry level understanding of pricing and where to look to begin to price yourself.
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think it's important. I think we've all, again, like I said, anybody who's been involved in a guide, even GVAA, they've all taken hits in different ways, and I think yours is sometimes given less of its due because of that, right? Okay, so again, targeted towards beginners. The other thing is, I think you were looking to fill gaps in guides in areas where they were less prevalent, things like long form and narration and audiobooks, which really didn't previously exist very well. So,
Mhm.
I mean,
No,
again,
absolutely. And that's a thank you for bringing that up. And I will say that there in the beginning of this we talked about people have differing opinions.
yeah.
I think it's not only about the price, but it's also a differing opinion about where we start as a beginner. In my
Mhm.
opinion, I would not like that. I just whatever reason personally, I could not say to a brand new beginner who's just starting in industry, you're going to compare to Gabby, and you're going to have the experience, the
Mhm.
know-how,
Mhm.
the wisdom, the equipment, the process to charge the same price that Gabby is charging. Now I'm saying this to everybody because there are some people who really don't believe there should be a difference no matter the first time when you're in or not.
Correct.
I just personally believe that I couldn't see that as making sense to me about how I could stack someone up against someone who's been in the industry for years and years and years. You know what I mean? Now, but that's why I also said I believed in growth. You're going to grow. So that, yeah.
And
So you're right, Gabby. I mean, I wanted to show that there could be a beginner rate because we had a lot of beginners not getting any work at all.
yeah, and I mean, look, I'm not trying to deviate, right, the purpose of this topic
Mm,
to defend my friend,
no.
but at the same time I'm going to, because I do think let's be transparent about that conversation because I think it's important. Um Expectations play a role in anything. And like I said,
Mhm.
this topic's probably going to travel over into into
Oh yeah.
multiple days, so it's
Oh yeah.
fine. We got time.
Yeah. I think you're right.
But here's the other thing, and I thought about this long and hard last night, right? Because I knew we were going to talk about this today. And I have long been one of those people who says, okay, yes, there is no difference. There's no difference between me as somebody who's been doing this for 25 years and somebody who's brand new coming in. If you're talented and you have the skill and you're a great actor, then you should be charging the same. But okay. So this is where it got fun. I'm telling you, I sat down with this last night and I was like, all right, let's be honest here. Let's get real. Did I hold to my commercial rates when I was just starting out? Yes, I did. Because of the mainstream and the exposure, right, that you get with certain areas of this industry. And so for me, commercial was always that, promo was always that. So I would hold tight to those rates. But that doesn't mean I didn't take lower budget jobs.
Mm.
I had a client, and I'm gonna disclose. I'm gonna talk. Why not? Right? Why not? It was 20 friggin' years ago.
Right, right,
You
right.
know, I had a client that paid me to do these it was early e-learning, really, is a lot of what it was. It was early e-learning, and it was, you would get paid by the prompt, right? You had like individual prompts, almost like telephony and IVR, and
Right.
you would record the individual prompt, you'd master it, you'd label it a certain way, you'd load it to their system, you'd move on and you'd do another one. And they paid $10 a prompt.
Mm.
That was it.
Mm.
That was it. $10 a prompt.
Yep.
There were some times I would invoice them $60, right? There was sometimes I would invoice them multiple hundreds of dollars,
Right.
There was anything in between. I think at one point I got to a place where I actually convinced them to enter into like a retainer with me, where they paid me like a flat rate for
Oh,
so
okay.
many of these prompts per month. But there's a lot of people who would look at that and go, "Oh my God, Gabby worked for $10." Yeah, yeah. Because if I can knock out these prompts were less than 30 seconds.
Right.
So do the math,
Right.
right? And that's how I've always viewed what we do. Do the mathematics based on the time. So if I can make $10 in a
Right.
minute and a half, and I'm counting everything, editing, processing, up
Oh yeah.
like getting it out the door, like quick, right?
Yes.
So if I can do however many of those in an hour and I can make, 70, 80, $100, hello,
Right. Yeah.
who does
Yeah,
that?
I'll never. I love that you brought that up because I remember early on when I started thinking, okay, how much do I charge an hour? And then I looked at like doctors typically make around like, I mean, probably I think it's somewhere in 90 to $120 an hour or something like that or a little more. And then I started to think about, if I do 100 words, that takes me under 5 minutes. You know what I mean? And I make
Yeah,
$100 even doing that.
yeah.
I'm like, how do I justify? Am I pretty like charging someone with that doesn't I understand that. I'm just saying early on this was my
Hmm.
thought process and I realized, wow, that's
Absolutely.
actually really a lot of money for a short period of time. You know what I mean? What's it just didn't add up to me. Like it wasn't making sense. When I started getting other people's hourly rates, like, and I'm like, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a voice actor. I mean,
But sometimes we have to look at that. And sometimes we also have to look, and this is where again, it's big picture thinking, right?
right,
Like
right,
so now 25 years later,
right,
right? 20 years later, whatever. I can walk into the booth, I can be done in, this is not an exaggeration. I can have a session that is under 15 minutes in length, and I can be multiple thousands of dollars
right,
richer from that process.
right,
Now, from the outside perspective, friends, family, they'll look at that and they'll go, "Oh my God, like you
right,
just made doing what?"
right,
And I'm like, but, right?
right.
That makes up for the 20 other hours this week
Right, exactly, exactly. You right, and
that I
that's
didn't
an
have
important distinction.
working. Yes. And then you start to average it out and you
Right,
look at the math and
right,
but the goal, yes, the goal is always to be ahead on an hourly. The goal is
right.
always, like this crew that was at my house and helping with all this work, like, we've always long made the joke about like, right, a shitty day doing voiceovers is still better than digging a ditch. I watched it live, people.
Yeah.
I watched four young men in holes in my studio, in the studio, 3 feet into the ground, right? Human
Right.
beings shoved into little tiny holes. And
Mm,
I'm like sitting there going,
mm.
"Oh my God." It's happening in front of me. This is the
Yeah.
very analogy I have made my
Yeah.
entire career, and these dudes are doing it. And I know that they get paid very well for what they do,
Right.
but even if they're making 40 or 50 bucks an hour, come on.
No,
We have the
absolutely.
potential to average, like you said, twice that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I will say from myself, what I charged early on is just night and day different from what I
Of
charge now.
course.
It's not even close. And I would tell everyone here, I have not personally charged those prices in years and years and years, and I wouldn't do a job now for those prices. But I did when I started, but I don't now. So that's what I mean by things change from being a beginner as you grow.
And it's always knowing that minimum for yourself.
Hmm.
There's so many voice actors who, right, they won't do a job for less than 250. They won't do a job for less than 200,
Right.
150, whatever it is. But make no mistake about it, we all make exceptions.
Yes.
Because if I have a long-standing client who I've made a lot of money with over the years,
Right.
and this is all the dust in the air
Oh
from
yeah.
this
Oh yeah.
concrete work
Yeah. Yeah. The
getting to me.
concrete and all this. Yeah.
I'm getting froggy. But if you know, I can if one of them calls me up and goes, "Hey, Gabs, I got a $125 job. It'll take you 5 minutes." Yeah, send me the copy. Come on, am I really
Right.
going to say no? Absolutely not.
Right. Exactly.
Part of that is just relationships too.
Hmm.
So you know what it is for you. Know that minimum. Does it mean you have to broadcast it? Does it mean it has to be other people's business? No.
Absolutely.
Keep it to yourself if you need to.
Yeah. That's a good.
So tomorrow,
Yeah. That's a good
yeah,
point.
yeah. Tomorrow we can dive deeper. We can talk more about specifics and answer questions, guys. Throw your great questions at us. I know you got them.
Oh,
I know you
absolutely.
do.
I know you guys got them. Yeah, I think today was a good day to kind of give the 20,000 foot view,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there are so many different
I like that.
opinions,
I like that.
and but yeah, we can get a little more into the weeds tomorrow. I think that's good. And yes, please bring questions, just like Gabby said. Well, you know what, you guys, thank you so much for watching today. This is an exciting conversation that will continue to go forward. So we love you all. Have a good one. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.